Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the Bunker to Bunker podcast. We are graciously joined by Jeff Eisenband. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. Jeff is a broadcaster on PGA Tour Live, MSG Networks, Scratch, basically anything golf, he does it. Jeff, how are you on this wonderful Tuesday evening?
I'm great. I'm glad to be a part of this. You know, you guys just come in being just names on a Twitter screen to now actually being on a screen with me. So I'm glad to do it.
You got it. Yeah. Yeah, it's coming full circle, which is nice to finally put as one would say, put faces to names. So kind of getting to know each other, doing all that stuff. But yeah, I guess could you just tell us a little about yourself? About your background. I kind of dived into your broadcasting experience, but for all the people out there who aren't aware of your full profile, I'd just love to hear a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess start with the current is that I do a lot of work for PGA Tour Live, which is the PGA Tour streaming coverage on ESPN Plus, featured groups, featured holes, main feed, whatever it may be. So I'd say that's where the bulk of my work comes in, and definitely the bulk of my work in golf. You mentioned Scratch. I've hosted a handful of YouTube videos for Scratch. I've contributed to PGAtour.com, and then MSG Networks. I'm a New Yorker, so I've spent a lot of time within the New York media. I've done some sports betting, fantasy coverage for Knicks, Devils, Islanders games. I've done some golf fantasy work actually on New York TV for MSG Networks. So that's the current. Beyond that, I worked for a long time with the NBA 2K League, broadcasting esports. I actually still do some golf esports for the USGA and the DP World Tour. And then going really far back, I used to work for a website called thepostgame.com, which was a Yahoo Sports site. I did a ton of writing there. And I was back at a different Big Ten school than you guys, Northwestern University.
Yeah. There you go.
Yep. The home of Ryder Cup Europe, as some might say.
Sure.
But did not play on the golf team or anything like that. But that's where I can go back to in my golf journalism career.
Yeah. Were you there at the glory days? What would that been? Fitzpatrick, was he there when you were there at Northwestern? Or is that...
Fitzpatrick is 2 years younger than me. He was a freshman when I was a junior. I still remember sitting right before my junior year, sitting in my living room with my parents, and Matt Fitzpatrick was winning low amateur at the Open Championship, and they're giving him his medal. And I'm sitting there saying to my mom, like, he's going to be at Northwestern in like a month. Like, this is crazy right now. No one realizes what is happening, that we have the best amateur golfer in the world is coming to campus. He spent 2 quarters. Northwestern's on trimester quarter system, really one half of a golf season, and looked around and I think was like, I'm the best amateur golfer in the world. I should probably focus on turning pro. So he left soon after. And but still, Pat Goss, the instructor at Northwestern, that's his guy. So still very much active within the Northwestern world.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good transition right into to the Ryder Cup. You were talking about like the golfing mecca essentially with Northwestern, where you have Matt Fitzpatrick, then you have Luke Donald being there previously in the late '90s, early 2000s. So great transition to that. We're coming off of a rather interesting Ryder Cup where we had the U.S. just kind of looking like a fish out of water on Friday, a little bit of a rebound on Saturday, and gave the Europeans a scare on Sunday. But that scoreline does not tell the story of what happened. Kind of curious your thoughts on what went wrong, if there was anything that could have changed it like right off the bat.
It's hard, right? You want to point the finger at everything. And I think that it becomes so difficult that 2 years go into 3 days. I always thought about that as a kid. Like, what's going to happen when I wake up feeling ill the day of the SATs? Like, you just don't know what's going to happen when the Ryder Cup actually shows up. And I think there was perhaps some, overconfidence after the way that Whistling Straits went. And I think it was, I remember I just waking up and seeing the 4-0 score was just thinking of the Mike Tyson line, right? That everyone has a plan. I think I tweeted, everyone has a plan until you're down 4-0 because you've lost, the first 4 sessions. And it definitely felt like Europe was more prepared for the course. I think that it is worth noting that you didn't have American players playing the Italian Open over there.
Sure.
I know Justin Thomas had played the French Open before the last Ryder Cup in Europe, and that should definitely be something that Americans think about going forward. And then it's a matter of finishing. I mean, how many weeks on the PGA Tour do we talk about guys like Ben Griffin? You know, can you finish on Sunday? Can you finish on the weekend?
Yeah.
Can you really stand up to the pressure? And the great example was Wyndham Clark, right? Who ends up going 1-1-1. If he could play the 18th hole, he probably goes 2-0-1, you know, at least 2-0-1, 2-1, whatever it may have been. But there were just points that were just handed out down the stretch by Team USA. And I think that was the biggest thing to me, was just following through, because how much can we really critique the fundamentals of the team,
Sure.
right? They're great golfers. That's not the issue. It's about putting it all together and perhaps mentally going into opposing territory and being able to really feel like it's a challenge and that they need to kind of keep it all tight together.
Yeah. I mean, it sounded like the broadcast kept, I know you're a broadcaster, you know, they kept piping in the stats about how the Americans don't do well with like the par threes. I think all the long par threes, we couldn't score at the 18th hole. We couldn't score. You know, we're more drive it and wedge play.
Yep.
So I guess like the last question on this topic is like, should there be like an impartial Ryder Cup committee to pick these courses that it's kind of like a fair play? Because in 2025 we have at Bethpage Black, where, you know, you saw like Brooks Koepka won in 2019. You know, it kind of fits us. Like, I guess, what are your quick thoughts on that? You know, could like solve it.
You know, I think there's two parts to that answer, right? Bethpage, I think, is going to be very similar to Whistling, Hazeltine. I know we lost at Medina, but it looked like Team USA had it in the bag through 4 sessions. I think that there's that competitive advantage of taking these American courses, which are major championship venues, right? These are not major championship venues that are necessarily being played in Europe. They could go to an Open Championship course. They have, if you go deep into the Ryder Cup history. But I think that's where, you know, I think Americans, when you make the course as hard as they've made some of those courses, I think it benefits the Americans. I don't know if Justin Rose would play this well at a difficult Bethpage Black, right? I just don't see that from some of the ball strikers and some of the putters that Europe has on their team, that there's just so many more elements, and you saw it exposed at Whistling Straits. With that said, I like the idea of teams having that home course advantage. I like feeling, you know, it reminds me of baseball in a lot of ways, right? And I'm a Yankees fan, but take Fenway Park, for example. There is a competitive advantage that Red Sox outfielders have in Fenway Park.
Right.
You see it in the playoffs. You go back, watch the film of players at Fenway, opposing players not knowing how to play off the green monster, pesky pole. I think that's an element of this that makes it even more sort of, you know, gives fans even that more pride in what they're creating. It's like, you got to go beat us at our best, set up for our best.
Sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
But let me just say one more thing, because when you talk to people, they said the Le Golf National setup 5 years ago was much more geared toward, like you said, that iron play, that wedge play that would benefit perhaps the European players. And everyone that we talked to going into this didn't think it was as much of a competitive advantage for the Europeans. I think it had much more to do with them understanding the course, knowing the course, playing the course more than just simply, you know, the yardages.
Yeah. I mean, you still got to hit those shots and make the putts. I mean, they're all like professionals out there. They're all like the best in the game. So I guess the transition from Ryder Cup back to kind of like the broadcast landscape, you know, we kind of said that you have all these different heads in different areas of the broadcasting landscape. You know, I told a friend that I was having you on the podcast, and he was like, oh, he's a guy that does like the, no, he was saying that he watched like the 2K stuff. And he was like, you're having him on? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh my God, I've been, you know, hearing that guy forever, so, you know, since you've been doing that. So you're known not only for PGA Tour Live, for everything else. How do you kind of like balance that as a career for like prep? Like, how do you kind of balance that off, you know, off air?
Well, I appreciate your friend watching and knowing all that.
True story.
It's
I'm not just
been
saying that because you're on.
I
So
it's been a challenge though. I think that I've always taken in my career kind of take as much opportunity as you can and roll with it. And the NBA 2K community accepted me as the opportunity came up that I was doing some basketball work, started doing some NBA Twitch hosting at a time when the NBA was really looking for younger voices within their properties. And then that led to the NBA 2K League starting. I had no idea it was going to start, but it started, and I looked around and I said, hey, can I be a part of this? Like, yeah, we're going to give you a microphone and just have you walk around, interview these people, see what is going on. And I found out there were these amazing stories, right? It's kind of like what we're looking at when it comes to the PGA Tour, the Korn Ferry Tour players coming onto the tour right now, introducing to new players. I noticed all these gamers had these stories that people didn't exactly know. So I love that from the journalistic side. Golf, which was another, when I left a full-time job to go freelance broadcast, golf was an area that I looked at and said, this is something that I love, feel passionate about, and feel like I can enter this field. You know, I can't become an NFL broadcaster on CBS or Fox on Sunday tomorrow. There's certain things that you just can't get to, but golf, I was already doing some golf coverage and I felt passionate about it. And I felt like golf was getting younger. I'm talking 3 to 5 years ago. And, you know, now the pandemic, I think, even blew that up even more. And so I really hit the ground hard there and have tried to take advantage of every opportunity that I can get, similar to 2K, geared toward younger people. You know, I started by doing fantasy golf, some golf betting talk. You know, let me get my foot in the door. Let me do what I could do. There's things I do at Scratch that are definitely geared toward a younger audience. And, you know, that's been the mindset of kind of do what you love, do it to the best of your ability. And also how can you differentiate yourself? How can you do something different that people aren't doing?
yeah,
That's kind of like an interesting kind of point to touch on is in an industry that's like so saturated to an extent. You know, golf is a global sport, so there's hundreds, maybe even thousands of people who are trying to have this dream or trying to follow along this path that you are in. How do you like go out and differentiate yourself? Because obviously, like the basic answer is, oh, go find your niche. Well, okay, well the niche is golf. That's not the top sports that you would say, oh, I want to go broadcast NFL or NBA. So how do you find that you can like differentiate yourself, in that kind of niche realm already?
Well, I think the juxtaposition between esports and golf is interesting because I just turned 30, and in esports, I'm a dinosaur, right? It's like, what is
yeah,
this 30? If this 30-year-old guy's hanging out at the NBA 2K League studio, what's he want? As
That's
opposed
awesome to
to
me. No, that's awesome. That's
as
awesome.
opposed to I think golf, where it's like you're only 30 and
Yeah.
you understand the history of the Ryder Cup. Like, let's have a conversation. And so I
Mm.
think I've had that benefit of being young, but also I like to talk about talking about golf in a different voice. I think that you're seeing much more people like us, younger people, watching more golf, more endemic to the golf ecosystem, and to be able to talk about golf and to be able to talk about it in maybe a way that's geared toward a younger audience, just understanding cultural references, understanding vernacular, and not whispering and just talking like people know you're wearing plain brown khakis when you're not even, they can't even see you, I think is something that has been, I'd like to think, fresh for the industry and something that I've tried to do. So we're bringing energy. I go back to
Yeah.
my guy, Doug
yeah,
Smith, who is a former player himself, who still plays a little bit and who does has worked with me a lot as an analyst. And the first time we did feature holes together, we're like bouncing off the walls talking about, a par 3 on Thursday, and people were looking around like, what is going on with these guys? But at the
Yeah.
same time, it is entertaining. It's something that's making
Sure.
us
hmm
feel our juices pumping when we didn't expect to care about Trevor Werbelow hitting a shot on the 12th hole on a Friday. Uh, that's the goal, I think, in my mind.
Yeah. That's
yeah,
that's a good point right there because something golf. I mean, to us three, like we love golf, very passionate about. So to us, it's very engaging, very fun, very high energy, but to the common folk, it's rather the opposite, low, boring. So that's a good transition point to, if you look at golf in today's age, golf broadcasting in that matter, gambling is becoming
Mhm.
more, I don't
Yeah.
want to say prevalent, but more involved.
Yeah.
So do you think that is like a reason that they're trying to make it more engaging, is saying, okay, well, the gambling population, it's very young. Unfortunately, most people will gamble on anything. That's just our generation, I guess. Do you have any opinion on like, golf integrating gambling? Leaderboards have live odds, or featured group will throw out who pars this hole, who does this. Do you have any opinions on like how that's being interjected within your broadcast or just in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big reason why golf betting has grown as fast as it has is consistency. I think
Sure.
that you see it with the NFL, right? You just have to worry about betting on the NFL Sundays, maybe Thursday or Monday night you're going to throw something at it. With golf, you know that it's the same. Like if you want to place your bets before the week, you got to do them before that first tee shot's hit on Thursday. If you want to
Hmm.
do something on the weekend or on Sunday, you can revisit on Sunday morning. And I think that's helped from a golf standpoint. I think it's helped with fantasy golf first, that you knew it was every week, same time. You don't have to worry about things. And then there's that ability that I think people are realizing in golf betting, that you can do, you can find more closer to 1-to-1 odds if you want to bet cuts or you want to bet top 40s. But if you want to also shoot, I'm trying to think of the golf equivalent of like shoot for the fences. If you want to try to break 59 here with your
Yeah,
betting, you're
there we go.
you can take a run at a guy with really wide odds to
Mhm.
win, to win the tournament. So I think that people have really found that sort of level of golf betting has been really interesting. And then I think it's great how the game has been bringing it in more, not just the PGA Tour, but the major championships too, the DP World Tour. Because I think look, I understand why people are watching featured holes on a Thursday or Friday. I get
It's
it.
because of you, right? It's solely because of
Me?
you. Yeah.
It's we're watching we're talking to families of the players, and a lot of people are betting on these players, betting on holes, and I think that it's created a lens for the sport that's, I think, been beneficial. I think that the
Mhm.
NFL, you look at why the viewership from the 1980s to now has dramatically changed, is fantasy football brought in a whole audience of people that were interested in the sport but became much more interested because of it. And
Sure.
I think that's where there's part of an opportunity for golf, as long as everything is kosher when it comes to the players themselves. And I don't think that we've had problems to this point, but you do need to keep it cleaned up and make sure that that's all fine and well.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
definitely.
a yeah.
I mean, I'm that guy who's up at 8 o'clock to hear you talk about Ben Griffin on hole two. So, um, I'm there. I guess to kind of feed off that, we've seen the broadcast production improve. I guess the most notably CBS giving Homa a mic on a hole with like his caddy. I know that PGA Tour Live does, I think, on the range. You guys can speak to some players. Kind of what kind of improvements, we've seen those improvements. Kind of what improvements would you like to see? And kind of where do you see the production going in the next 5 or so plus years to come?
Yeah, I think it's only going to get better, right? I think that, like you mentioned, some of those, the player interviews, it was kind of touch and go at points the first season. You don't know what you're going to get
Hmm.
out of this. And I think it's just going to become the norm. I'm sure the first time that an NBA coach was interviewed in between quarters, people were like, how could this happen? I won't let this, and now it's something that's
Yep.
required of all coaches. So I think that over time, that's little things like that are going to continue on. I think that what we're able to do at PGA Tour Live is be very light on our feet and be able to adapt and also be able to experiment when you have these Thursday, Friday, Saturday rounds, right? This past week at Sanderson Farms, I know that Gino Bonelli, Joel Damon's caddy, ended
Hmm.
up walking with our walker, Robert Dameron, on Friday afternoon, covering a group. I think that's a great example of something that could be a one-off opportunity that we could just jump on. Kyle Rudolph, the NFL tight end at the 3M Open a year ago, was on Marquee Group Stream, and he was just walking with our guys and talking golf, talking NFL. I think he had just signed maybe with the Bucks at the time, would just decide to, he was going to play with Tom Brady, and we were able to talk to him about that. I think that there's ways to be, like I said, light on our feet in those situations, as there's more cameras, there's more microphones, there's more bodies, there's more tech on the ground. And that's testament to the amount of people that are watching golf and the amount of coverage that now is required for the sport.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting with the players, and then Gino going on. It's the space is growing every second. You can also speak to that. But I guess for you, some more fun questions. What's like the coolest broadcasting experience you have had in your career? It doesn't have to be just golf, but just in general.
It's a good question. I guess I can list kind of a couple. For golf, most golf broadcasting has still been very much in studio, out of our studio in Jacksonville for me, St. Augustine. But I'd say doing the Scottish Open, the Genesis Scottish Open this year, and we had the 17th hole down the stretch when Rory came through and made the birdie on 17 and then ended up making the birdie on 18. That was a whole fun experience because I was up at 12:30 a.m. every day in St. Augustine to call that, which you forget that most people haven't watched everything, right? I mean, I watched almost that entire tournament. Most people were waking up for some coffee golf right at the end, but it was a fulfilling, cool experience to be able to call all of that and kind of be enough in the thick of it. Obviously, we had a little bit more coverage for that than we normally do because the TV window was more limited. And it was if you guys remember, it was raining in Scotland, so they actually moved up the tee times. So just to be able to be in the thick of that, Rory coming back to chase down Bob McIntyre was kind of probably the most my heart has started to race when calling golf. But then I would just also add, to the 2K League side, and to the esports side, the 2K League, and then also for the DP World Tour last year, I've gone on a couple amazing, crazy trips. With the 2K League, I went to Korea. With the DP World Tour esports, I went to Dubai last year. So, I mean, I'm on the plane flying Emirates direct, of course, you guys know, from JFK. I'm a lucky one.
High quality.
I'm getting on the plane, the 14-hour flight or whatever it was, maybe even more than that. And it just... I'm doing this for golf esports. It's crazy. And was able to, make a trip like that is where those are the types of trips I think you feel at least like, okay, everything that I've been doing here has been for a reason, and someone believes in me enough to send me literally to the other side of the globe. So it gets you focused on things.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. One day we can do that. You know what? We'll travel the world. We'll take it all in. Golf's global, so that's one of the benefits. I mean, let's go to the Sunshine Tour in South Africa. Let's do it all. Let's see it all.
You say it, but it's interesting, right? I think right before COVID, you got to remember that the PGA Tour, not just the Zozo, but there was a tournament, Japan, Korea, China at the time.
The CJ Cup,
we're doing events. And then obviously Scotland's been added to the schedule. We'll see where things go. WGCs used to travel a little bit more. But I think this sport continues. The best players in the world continue to play at a global level, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it definitely is. And they're kind of, I don't want to say competing with, but you look at like the tennis schedule. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, but I mean, they travel everywhere. So like they're right in the Asian swing right now. But unfortunately the PGA Tour, due to whatever you want to call it, sanctions, legislations, pressures by the government, whatever, that, is kind of going to disappear for a while. But it'd be really cool to see, the PGA Tour. I miss those WGC events. I miss those, like, more global events where everyone, these no-named Asian players are coming in and competing with the best in the world. So hopefully those can come back in the future because that'd be cool. But I guess continuing with these like rapid fire, does Tiger Woods play in the Masters or does he play in a major championship in the next like 2 or 3 years? Any takes on that?
Yeah. Again, I don't know Tiger's health. There was a report recently. It sounds like the Hero World Challenge, and I would assume that would include the PNC Championship, are within reach. I think Tiger cares more about playing with Charlie in the PNC than he does about most professional golf events. So it sounds like he's on that schedule. I mean, I could make something up, but I don't want to say that he's going to play Genesis again this year.
Yeah.
But if he can do it, there's no one that can talk him out of it. And it's interesting because the Masters, I think he'll play, because I think the Masters, I know Tiger loves to talk about that once he feels he can't compete, he's not going to play. I think he's going to show up at Augusta and play until he's 65, and I think that even if he can't really, because he's going to be there that week anyway. Are you going to tell me
exactly.
that he's going to go home, or he's not going to feel that competitiveness to try to make the cut? You don't think Fred Couples is going to needle him a little bit and say, Tiger, I made X amount of cuts after I was 50. You think you can do that? So I still think those are coming. I think it's just it's a matter of taking care of his body, and people need to really be patient with Tiger and understand that if it rains the way that it rained last year at Augusta, and even if he's, 2 under after the first round, and that's happening on Friday, and he might just pull out, you might get 3 more majors out of Tiger, 3 more majors playing. I'm not saying winning.
Mm-hmm.
If he's more, responsible about that. So we'll see what that's like going forward. It certainly seems like he's trying to get himself back into playing form. But I think that if the Genesis Invitational last year was him testing the waters, could he play Memorial, API, some other events? I just don't see it. I don't see that. I think that was the test, and I think now it's really the Genesis and majors that we'll see out of him.
Yeah. I'll throw this one quickly and then I'll let Josh take the next one. Just kind of building off the Tiger thing, not trying to hammer home the whole Ryder Cup thing, but do we see Tiger come out in 2025 as a potential captain? Do you think that is just people saying, oh, it has to be Tiger, or is that a legitimate thing that you could see happening?
No, I think it's legitimate. I think that one thing that with Tiger that people need to understand is he loves that side of the sport. Everyone that you talk to, when he was doing the captaincy for the President's Cup, he was over the top, probably more organized than some other captains. And when he was an assistant captain on the 2016 Ryder Cup team that won at Hazeltine, he was committed to being that guy, being an assistant captain. So I think that if he wants it, he'll have it. I think that, like everything with Tiger, I think that it's got to be more about how can I be even better than everyone else that was before me? And it seems like there's some rumblings about him taking the next 2 Ryder Cups. I know if you go back really, if you go back to the 80s and before, there were some more captains that took on multiple Ryder Cups. The President's Cup over the years has had captains take on multiple President's Cups. And the other, Europe, if guys didn't go to live, Europe had a Rolodex of captains, 3 to 5 captains coming up. The U.S. doesn't have that. After Zach Johnson, it's a matter of, I guess Fred Couples is never going to do it. He's a 2-time President's Cup captain, I believe.
Yeah.
He never was a Ryder Cup captain. Stuart Sink is a name that you can say, okay, he played in a bunch of Ryder Cups. He could be a Ryder Cup captain. He's a major champion, and maybe one day he will. But other than that, I mean, where do you go?
There's
Phil
not much,
would have been a captain. I don't know if Bubba would have ever actually been a captain. Until these guys that are in their 30s right now get there, there's not really any other options. And I think, Tiger's going to you also need someone, especially on the US side, to ignite the feeling of this event and get people to
Sure.
care. And I don't think Tiger goes into anything that he doesn't care about. And the Americans, not the Europeans, the Americans need some sort of lightning rod to rally behind. They need guys to show up and think, I'm playing for Tiger. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I better not screw this up. And
Yeah, I
I know
know.
there'd be talk that he used to be a problem when he'd be that way. But I think this generation looks at him different than those players that were his quote unquote teammates looked at it as.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Josh,
before we hop off, Jeff, I think this is the most important question. What's your favorite pizza slice in the city?
You know, I usually just will say a nice Joe's Pizza classic slice. I know if you get into Brooklyn, if you get into some of the Grimaldis or DeFerras, you're going to get more of the real true pizza. But I think maybe it's because I'm like you guys, I'm not old enough yet, so I've just taken the cheaper Joe's Pizza slices. I think that's the classic.
Yeah.
The classic, what you need. You know, the amount of Saturday nights. I said I'm 30, but in my 20s, I had New York where you're running somewhere and you're like, you know what? Joe's is on the way to where I'm going here. I got to grab dinner right before I'm going. You know, maybe need to pop in a mint or a piece of gum or something after I pour some garlic on the slice. But, you know, that's where my head's at right now.
Yeah, I've done that countless times too, only being here for a year and a couple months. But we appreciate your time, Jeff. It was awesome. Glad to talk to you, not just on Twitter, and we hope to hear you more on PGA Tour Live.
Of course, maybe I'll make one of those golf like immaculate grids you're making. Maybe I'll be an answer soon.
Oh.
Yeah,
we
I'll
can
definitely
make that
try
happen. That's
NBA 2K PGA Tour. Line it up.
Oh my. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I love that. That's the mixture we need. That's perfect. Well, yeah, Jeff, it was a pleasure. We appreciate it. And yeah, best of luck with everything in the future. And yeah, thank you again.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jeff. Talk soon.